Rumor: Rockets could trade Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook trade rumors have already begun. Apparently, Russell Westbrook could be available for trade, according to Russillo. So welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the Russell Westbrook trade rumors that have been popping up lately. Maybe you've seen this on your own timeline. Maybe you've seen this online, just looking at articles and things like that. There's a lot of reports out there that are saying, oh, Russell Westbrook could be traded. This is happening. The Rockets are over it. There's been a lot of YouTube videos that have a lot of views that are talking about, hey, Russell Westbrook's going to get moved. They're tired of it. This whole James Harden thing isn't going to work. Yeah, I'm here to tell you that it's complete nonsense. Now, to be clear, the idea that Russell Westbrook could be traded at some point in his Rockets tenure, like, that makes sense. Like, this whole James Harden, Russell Westbrook thing in the long term might not end up working, right? Because he definitely has some limitations within their own offensive system and blah, blah, blah. But the idea that right now in this moment, the Houston Rockets are actively shopping Russell Westbrook for trade is just not true. So where did this come from? Well, I think it was earlier this week, it was a couple of days ago at the point that this video was released. Ryan Russillo did a podcast and basically just kind of went on this quick little rant talking about the Rockets, and in it basically said that Russell Westbrook could be available. He thinks that Russell Westbrook is available, and he's talked to other people around the league that say, yeah, he is. Now, there's differing opinions on that. Some people said that no, I don't really think that they would move him, while other people have said, according to him in his own podcast, that they think that he could be available. And he goes on to say, and I can put the direct quote up on screen, but he goes on to say that essentially he doesn't think that they're actively shopping him, and it's all just speculation based off him as well as other people around the league, but they think that he is, again, and I quote, available. Now, there's a huge difference here, right? Because if he was explicitly reporting this as the Rockets are looking to actively trade Russell Westbrook, then he would have said, I've talked to people within the Rockets and they think that they're going to try and move Westbrook. This thing is already not working. But that's not what he said. He said, and I quote, is Daryl Morey actively calling people saying, hey, I've got to dump Westbrook? Well, of course he wouldn't do it that way. I think Westbrook is available, and we can talk about semantics. Of course, Daryl Morey would trade anyone if he thought it made his team better. Of course he would trade Westbrook if he could get off of that long-term money, if he thought the assets, the sum of the parts was better than having somebody that's considered a top 10 player. So essentially what he's saying here is the mindset of every single GM across the entire NBA. If they think that they're getting a good deal and they think that they're getting the better assets in the deal, then they would make the trade. So essentially, all that's being said here is Westbrook may or may not be available via trade. He may or may not be untouchable. And if they got a deal or an offer from somebody that they thought made their team better, then they would make the deal. And that's the exact same premise of the Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook thing initially. The Rockets just like Westbrook as an asset better than Chris Paul given their age and contract and things like that. And that's the only thing that's happening here. However, if you go and look on Twitter and online and stuff, everybody's saying Russell Westbrook is going to be traded. There's all these rumors going around, right? And I'm just here to tell you that it's just not true, y'all. And this is a really big issue with how we consume sports and sports news now. And you can, expand it even further beyond just sports if you want to, but there's so much information out there online that people don't bother to actually read the article or listen to the podcast. They just see the headline and then they just assume that it's true, and then they share it or they talk about it with their friends, and then all of a sudden within a couple of days it's all over the place as just fact based off of a couple of people initially just not looking into it at all. Like, I listened to this podcast a couple hours after it came out and thought literally nothing of it, and I wanted it to be true. Like, I want any kind of trade rumor stuff. Like, I'm actively invested in there being trade stuff happening in the NBA, and I listened to this and was like, okay, that means nothing. I wasn't going around saying, oh, Russell Westbrook could be traded. I wasn't, making some kind of video where I was trying to make it seem like a really dramatic situation when it's just not. And people just didn't bother to actually listen to the podcast or even just pull up one article and read the actual transcript of what he said. And now people are getting their news from like an eighth party that's just completely diluted the initial, report, if you even want to call it that. And now the entire internet thinks that Russell Westbrook is being shopped. Okay, now let's talk about the actual basketball stuff here. So as of this video, the Rockets are third in the West, and Russ is averaging 24-7. And it isn't always pretty, and they're definitely still working through some things in terms of how to best get those two guys to coexist, right? And obviously everything is still going to be 100% about James Harden, and Russ is still trying to find his way. They're only 35 games into the season. He's in an entirely different situation than he's ever been in. He's never played an offense like this where there's so much spacing, and it's going to take some time. However, I can completely understand the mindset of thinking that they just need to pull the plug on it this early. And I think that's probably where this over eagerness to accept these trade rumors comes from, because I think people recognize, and probably recognized from the moment he was traded, that it's just not a great long-term fit. Just because he's just not going to be able to shoot jump shots very well, and it just doesn't work. Like, right, he's not James Harden. James Harden is perfectly fit for this group and for this offense. And when you bring in a guy like Westbrook that's still good but not as effective, it's always going to look worse because you're always comparing it to what Harden is doing with the exact same pieces. So from like a sheer basketball standpoint, yes, like it makes a little bit of sense to think about trading Russell Westbrook now, especially with the contract. If you're getting good stuff now and you're getting some long-term cap relief to a team like Orlando or Detroit that would want someone to just get people into the seats that would help them maybe push for like the 7th or the 8th seed and bring them some star power, make them some money, then that kind of deal would make sense. But again, everything that I've read and listened to says that there's no active trade discussions around Russell Westbrook as of right now, as of the recording and uploading of this video. And I think part of the reason that this is becoming a thing is it's been a very, very dry trade season, specifically compared to last year when we had the Jimmy Butler trade that like started off everything, and then later on we got KP closer to the trade deadline. And now we're almost at January and we've had one trade, and it was a pretty minor one. And you can tell just how much people want trades based off how well that one video that I did where I just really quickly talked about the Jordan Clarkson Dante Exum trade, and it's got a ton of views for what should be a really small bit of news. But people want trades, they want player movement. That's a big thing in the NBA, and we've had so much of it this offseason. And now we've passed December 15th, which is the deadline for a lot of players that were eligible or to become eligible to be traded after signing a new deal last offseason, and people were ready, right? So like they see any kind of trade rumor, specifically with a name as big as Russell Westbrook, and they're like, oh man, this is going to be great, and they just run with it. And it would be cool. Like I'm 100% admitting that if Russell Westbrook got traded tomorrow, that would be awesome for me. There'd be so much stuff to talk about, and it would be really interesting, be a super interesting situation to look at and to pay attention to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can just run with stuff like this when it's not even being said, right? Like the only thing being said is Russell Westbrook is available. If someone called and offered them a good deal, they would be interested in trading him, or at least that's what Russell thinks, and that's what a couple people around the league think that he's talked to. And so essentially what this video boils down to is the Russell Westbrook stuff is not true, at least in the sense of, what you're seeing online for the most part. It's not a situation where he's actively being shopped. And then the other part of this is whether it's, looking further into an article or a podcast, or just looking for what was actually said, or watching videos like this. I would just encourage people to look into stuff a little bit more, right? Because it's such a common thing now to just get clicks, right, with any kind of news and any kind of rumor that is completely unsubstantiated. And it's such a huge issue because then it gets put out in more and more places, and it becomes a bigger and bigger issue, and then more and more people believe it, and it was never actually all that true to begin with. And this Russell Westbrook situation is a great example of that, and hopefully we'll learn from this moving forward, because it's not a great way to promote the league, because when something good actually does happen, when something interesting does actually happen in terms of a rumor, people won't believe it because they're assuming that it's another one of these BS things that you've seen around Twitter and online about Russ. So that would be my only caution, my only warning, is just look into stuff a little bit more. And again, it doesn't appear that a Russ trade is imminent this year at all. But there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. We're getting near the end of the year here and near the end of December, in which I put out a video every single day of the month, and I'm honestly probably just going to keep doing that moving forward as well. I've really enjoyed doing daily content and being able to talk about just whatever I find interesting without having to make it some big deal, in terms of putting out a video. So doing stuff every day has been really cool. I appreciate all the support. This has been an awesome month for me and for the channel. So just thank you guys so much for that. And I'm looking forward to 2020. We got 2 more videos coming out after this one, and then we'll be in 2020 in the NBA. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen, and I will see you all next time.